Welcome to episode 125 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who in his spare time conducts brass ensembles.
That's not true.
John Scott Sloat.
That's not true, although it does sound like there's a big band underneath us right now.
There is.
Yeah.
Yes, so now that the intro music is, at this point, faded out, you may hear in the background that there is a large band practicing in the studio below us.
So you went down and asked them when they're finished. When, well, maybe not when, but how many people are down there?
There's 10.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you know anybody?
No.
Okay.
No.
Were they Grace College people?
I don't think they are. I think they might be high school students.
Really?
Because I saw a small bus in our parking lot.
Oh, you're right.
From a Christian school that's in the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did see that
so
as well.
I think that's probably who's in there right now.
Okay.
That's my guess. So, and I resisted the urge to tell them John Sloat says to knock it off.
Yeah, that name carries a lot of weight.
It's a lot of weight.
Particularly with the small Christian school community.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, if you would like to get in contact with the show to bring in your own 8 to 10 member band and play in the background while we record, you can find us on Twitter at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. And we would, of course, love for you to leave us a review and a 5-star rating.
Yep, absolutely.
So, how was your weekend? Anything exciting?
Not that comes to mind. A lot of yard work, a lot of you remember that vertical herb garden I started that fell apart?
Yes.
I finished it.
Okay, that's good.
I'll have to show you a photo.
I would like to see that.
After the pod.
I would like to see that.
Yeah.
I think when I envision what your weekends are like during the summer, I would capture it by these two elements: growing grass and smoking.
Smoking meats, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, probably more grass growing right now.
Okay.
I do a little bit of smoking meats, but not as much as I used to. But
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Yes.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we could motivate John to send that to me, we could consider actually posting that on our social media.
I can send that to you.
Sent. Excellent. Okay. Now it's on me to post it. Since do you have access? I can't remember. Do you have access to
the Twitter feed?
You have access to our Twitter feed.
Not the Facebook one.
But not the Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. So, you want to jump right into sports here?
Sure.
Okay.
How was your weekend? You had a much more eventful weekend than I did.
Yeah, I was out of town.
Okay.
I was out of state, in fact. So I'll say a little bit more about that.
Oh, my bad.
That's fine. You're fine.
Oh, okay.
It's my one thing I liked. So,
okay.
So that'll be a tease.
Great.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean,
Well,
last episode we did do some teasing of some potential changes coming to the podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. And we did get one specific listener who was a little unsettled by the fact that we did that.
Yeah. He didn't like it.
Yeah. Which, yeah, I suppose I apologize for that, but, I'm not sure that I really apologize for that. We do have some life update news at some point.
At some point, yes.
Are we not? We're not. But we're not ready to.
No, I think it goes public Friday. So
okay, all right.
Yeah, maybe next week.
Nice.
Next week. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Gotcha. So there's another tease.
Yeah, we'll tease that.
Though, quite frankly, the person who gave us the most pushback about teasing probably already knows or will know by then.
He does, and he heard it from somebody, but he would not tell me who he heard it from.
I don't think it was me.
I don't think so either. I mean, but he wouldn't.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So now that we've done some more teasing, let's talk sports. Main things going on: NBA playoffs. Golden State up 3-0 on the Mavs. That series is over, except for the crying. And Celtics Heat, 2 games apiece. Have you watched any of the NBA playoffs?
Nope, have not.
What has stood out to me, I watched some, was the lack of close competitive games. Most of these games have felt like blowouts. Like the game last night, we're actually recording on a Tuesday, the day that we are releasing the episode.
Yeah, it wasn't even close.
Well, and what was the final margin? That was like 18?
Oh, it was 20.
20, okay.
Yeah.
The Celtics were up by as much as like 35 to 40 in that range somewhere. Just unexplainable blowouts in the playoffs. That's weird. But it looks like we're going to have Golden State from the West and then either the Celtics or the Heat in the East.
And what did we guess? Celtics Heat? Is that what we – or excuse me, Heat Warriors?
I think you went with Heat and I went with Celtics just to be contrary.
Okay.
I would not enjoy a Golden State Miami finals. I don't like either of those teams. But NHL playoffs are going on. Neither of us are following that. Correct?
No, I mean, I see it on Twitter, just like I see the NBA playoffs, but no, I haven't watched anything.
And the PGA Championship was this weekend.
Yes.
I did not follow a single moment of that, other than I saw a tweet that said Tiger Woods withdrew after round 3, after shooting a 79 in round 3.
The only tweet I saw about it was that this is the worst 2 back-to-back major championships in a generation.
Oh, that could be. I was out of town. I was with family, so that was, even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have watched much. But I might have tried to follow a little bit more on Twitter, but just hasn't moved the dial for me. What's going on with your Mets?
The Mets still have not lost consecutive games this season. So every time we lose, the next one we win. So that's a good recipe for a good season.
Yeah.
So we're in. They're in. Oh my goodness, they're in San Francisco right now. The game started at 9:45.
That's like 2 hours past your bedtime.
That's not quite 2. I'm definitely in bed, but I definitely had it up last night. Luckily, in like the 3rd inning, they scored 5 runs. I was like, I think I'll go to sleep. And they won 13-2 or something like that.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, did I see Max Scherzer is on the DL?
Yeah. He has an oblique injury, so he's strained that somehow.
Okay.
And so he's on the shelf for 6 to 8 weeks. So we're stitching together pitching performances right now.
All right.
And so we're really like just trying to get to the All-Star break. If we get to the All-Star break, we get at least we'll get 2 of our 3 pitchers that are on the IL.
Oh, okay. Good stuff.
So, yeah, it's been a good season, though. I mean, we're in first place, up 8 games in May.
Yeah.
That feels pretty good.
That is good, yeah. Let's remind our listeners at this point about our summer read.
Yeah, so we're doing Randy Newman's Mere Evangelism, 10 Insights from C.S. Lewis to help you share your faith.
Yes. And we'll have a link in the show notes. We will start discussing that the episode that drops June 8th. So if you already have it or want to get a head start on that, we will discuss the introduction and the first 3 chapters.
So that's not next week, but the following week.
Correct. 2 episodes from now, because this one's dropping on the 24th. The next one will drop on the 31st. Is that right? Today's 24th? Yeah.
Yeah, today's 24th.
So 31st, and then June 7th will be the first episode that we discuss this.
Okay. Well, we'll have to pre-record that since I'm out of town that day.
Yeah, tis the season of the year.
Yeah, conferencing.
Weird and just inconsistent weird times to record, like on a Tuesday morning today and having a band accompanying us in the basement. Though
although they've stopped or perhaps are getting reprimanded. Heard some flat notes there. So
yeah. So make sure you pick up a copy of Randy Newman's book. We'll start discussing that June 7th. And we will conclude that ultimately with a recorded interview with Randy.
And that's on the schedule.
Yes, we are scheduled to record that in a couple of weeks, and that episode will drop, I think, July 4th week.
Yeah.
is when that drops.
Okay. What else are you reading this summer? Just out of curiosity. What do you got a couple bookmarks in right now?
Yeah, so I just finished Rod Dreher's The Benedict Option. I had not read that yet. Have you read that?
I have not. I've heard a lot about it. A lot of hot takes about that.
Yeah, it's what's striking is it came out in like 2017.
Yeah.
And
it's been out for a while.
And he is ahead of the curve on seeing a lot of these things. And again, I don't agree with everything that's in there, but a lot of good, thoughtful ideas on how Christians should react to living in a culture that is increasingly more and more hostile towards traditional Christian beliefs. So,
and is he Protestant, Catholic? Like, where does he find himself?
I think he is Eastern Orthodox.
Okay. So he went with the one that I didn't mention. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, indeed. So, but very friendly towards evangelicals, and he tends to be a little bit more friendly towards evangelicals. At points, you will read it and say, "This is an evangelical." Oh, no. Actually, some of the things he's suggesting, that's not really evangelical. But that was interesting.
Any other bookmarks in books right now? Anything that are?
Well, I'm gearing up for our summer reading group, and I have to make a decision on what book we're doing. Okay. So, trying to land on what we're going to do. I think, spoiler alert to the guys in the reading group, I think we're going to do T.D. Alexander's Face to Face with God on Christ's role as priest and mediator, I think. So I think that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And if you'd like to be a part of that, move to the Warsaw area, become friends with Matt Harmon, and get invited to his summer reading group.
There you go. What about you?
Well, this will be one of the things I like, but I'm still in the middle of a C.S. Lewis biography, so I put that down for a couple of months, picked it back up. He's a fascinating person.
Yeah. When we interview Randy, you can work in some questions in there because he's a C.S. Lewis guru.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One of the things I just recently read, I wasn't planning on going here right now, but did you know that C.S. Lewis corresponded with a priest in Italy? They would write letters back and forth, but Lewis didn't speak Italian, and this Italian priest didn't speak English, so they wrote letters back and forth in Latin to one another. Isn't that wild?
Yes.
That's insane to me that they were both so good at Latin that they could correspond. And I don't think maybe they met once, but I know when this guy died, Lewis felt like he really lost somebody.
That is interesting. Yeah,
anyway,
Lewis is a fascinating
dude.
So
I'm reading that. I'm reading What About Free Will? Book I picked up at T4G.
Yes.
And then I just got Thomas Kidd's Jefferson biography.
That's on my radar that I want to pick up.
I've read the introduction and part of the first chapter. It's
his stuff is always good.
Oh my goodness! Well, he takes such an interesting look at founding fathers, particularly. Like I think he's really good on the founding fathers.
Yeah, his Whitefield biography is good as well. If people haven't read that,
I haven't read that one. I've read his. Oh my goodness, his Ben Franklin biography was quite good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, you ready for our main topic?
Let's do it.
All right. So today we are talking about Martin Luther and his understanding of vocation. So a little background to this. Our president the band's back.
The main topic is here.
The main topic is here. It's transition music is what it is. Our president at the time sent me an email, said, hey, there's this organization.
The president of Grace College and Theological Seminary.
Yeah. The president.
Not the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, because, I mean, you are a well-connected, influential,
I am not that
person.
well-connected, although I don't – do I know any politicians? Probably not. I could probably get a hold of our congressman if I needed to.
Yeah.
Like I know somebody in his office, but anyway, I'm not that well connected. The president of our school contacted me and said, hey, I want you to explore being part of this group. And so it has to do with vocation. And they let us sort of define vocation however we want. And so I did a little seminar for faculty and staff here at Grace on Martin Luther and his view of vocation. And that was a fascinating discussion and time to engage. And I've since given a similar talk to our seniors in the School of Ministry about vocation and discipling people toward vocation. So that was really interesting. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Martin Luther's view on vocation. Have you done much reading on that front, or not much at all?
Not much. Not on Luther in terms of vocation. I've read other Luther stuff, but not a ton on vocation. I was in one of the reading groups you led here. That discussed vocation. I forget the name of the book that we were working through.
The Purposeful Graduate.
There you go.
Yeah, and that was more research surrounding vocation.
Right, and what different institutions had done to facilitate students thinking about it and such. So,
yeah. And then you also attended my talk.
Of course. I'm a big John Slope fan.
Yeah.
I'll follow around. So maybe you could help us by starting with what is vocation as you understand it, or as Luther understands it, or as even we here at Grace want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Whatever angle you want to go with.
Yeah. So a little bit how I've defined vocation is – so vocation is a word we borrow from the Latin. It just means calling. So I define vocation this way: God's calling and purpose for you to use your gifts, talents, and responsibilities in order to help meet the needs of other people.
Okay.
So that's how I defined it in our talk: using talents, gifts, responsibilities in order to meet the needs of other people. And I would say Luther roughly would agree with that you are to use whatever calling the Lord has put in your life, whether that of a milkmaid or whether that of a cobbler, or I'm just pulling out old jobs.
How about a contemporary job in there?
Yeah, investment banker.
Okay.
To
a construction worker.
Yeah. Ultimately, and Luther always saw vocation couched in the ability to serve others.
Okay.
And so what feeds into that really nicely is his understanding of justification. Like he cannot talk about vocation without talking about justification also. So justification, which I think Luther's more well known for, discussing that he doesn't need to earn this salvation from God and it gets God's approval, and therefore isn't trying to work to earn that, but instead could turn out and focus that on other people as a way to serve them.
Okay.
So that's one of Luther's key elements of vocation.
Okay. So when it comes to vocation, help us think about how specifically does Luther help us on this subject, and how were his contributions maybe innovative in light of his historical context?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, how much to say. Luther really comes of age during a pretty pivotal moment, and he's part of the pivotal moment, if not the linchpin of the pivotal moment, of dealing with how the Catholic Church viewed work. So Catholic Church viewed, how do you build God's kingdom? Well, you become a priest, you become a monk, you become a cardinal, you become a pope, you become a fill-in-the-blank church role, right?
Yeah.
Where Luther wanted to say, like, no, how you help and serve others, how you serve God, how you do this is by doing whatever's in front of you. And so sort of shifting that from only the priest really serve God to every person. There's a priesthood of all believers.
Yeah.
And I think that works on a couple levels, right? It works on the level of we can all approach God. It's not just I have to go to a priest in order to pray to God or to confess sin to God or anything like that. But it's also we can all build God's kingdom and work to build His kingdom on earth.
Yeah. So in one sense, as far as I understand it, it seems like Luther is overcoming the very sharp distinction between sort of sacred and secular.
Yeah.
That there were the there were the priests and the people working in the church who were doing holy things, sacred things, and then there was everybody else who was just doing secular things. Being a farmer, being a cobbler, as you mentioned,
A cobbler, yeah.
a blacksmith.
Do you have a cobbler currently?
I do not.
You know we have one in Warsaw?
I think I did know that.
Yeah, there's a cobbler in Warsaw, a guy that calls himself a cobbler.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the listeners that don't know the word cobbler, it's somebody that repairs shoes.
Shoes, yeah.
And so you cobble the heels on, and I think that's the proper verb.
That's probably right. Yeah. Yeah. So
has to be a guy over 60, I think.
At least.
I don't think you can have a 22-year-old cobbler.
Yes.
At least one that you trust.
Okay. Yes. I agree. If it's okay, I want to move on from the cobbler discussion, unless we're talking about peach cobbler, berry cobbler. Delightful.
Very different
Those
cobblers.
are the cobblers that I'm most familiar with. But when it comes to vocation and what Luther had to say to help us, maybe talk a little bit more about his understanding of vocation and how it relates to sort of the ordinary activities of life and that kind of thing. Because I think in our current context, we often think of maybe career or a job and don't think as much about vocation. So maybe kind of parse out some of how those terms refer to overlapping at one level but very distinct things.
Yeah. This feels like a conversation we have all the time at the university where I want to talk about vocation as broad as possible, right? That when we have a vocation or when we have a calling, it's one of many in our lives. So you, Matt Harmon, have the vocation of podcast host, but you also have the vocation of professor, writer, husband, father, intramural basketball player. You wear all of these different. You have all these different callings on your life.
Yeah,
and in a sense, God has placed all of those different callings on your life, either by giving them to you as interest, things like writing or intramural basketball, or podcast hosting, for that matter. But some are part of your career, right? Being a professor, writing certainly plays into that as well.
Yeah.
So you wear – it's not just a calling that you have, like some people talk about the calling to ministry or the calling to be a doctor or the calling to be an auto mechanic, whatever it may be. So I think that's a helpful diagnostic between career and calling, right? That calling encompasses much more. And Luther would go as far as to say that when we practice our callings correctly or when we practice our vocations correctly, that we are actually mediating some of God's grace to other people. Calls that the mask of God. So in his discussion of the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread, when we pray that, it is a way that we are ultimately praying for the variety of people that are practicing a vocation or a calling in order to help meet our daily needs. So what do you have for breakfast this morning, Matt? Did you skip breakfast?
I had a breakfast bar, like a chocolate caramel nut kind of breakfast bar.
Okay, so how did that breakfast bar come to be? Well, it was designed in a lab, and I'm just joking. I'm sure it had some oats in there, and somebody had to harvest those, and somebody had to package those. I'm sure they're processed.
Yep.
Somebody had to go to Switzerland and mine the chocolate and melt it and pour it over and wrap it up. And then there's a truck driver that brought it to Aldi.
Of course.
Yeah. And then your wife practiced the vocation of grocery shopping and went in there and purchased all. I'm assuming your wife does the grocery shopping.
She does. Yeah.
Okay. So all of these things are ways that the Lord is meeting your needs and answering your prayer of give us this day our daily bread.
Okay.
And being able to view that as God intentionally meeting our needs through the vocations of other people.
Interesting. So when it comes to thinking about our own lives, what are some ways that we can discover, determine, unearth, I'm not sure whatever term you want to use,
Yeah.
our different callings or our different vocations.
Yeah. I know we have several pastors that listen to the pod. In fact, we had the pastor from Illinois email me back after I emailed him after the show.
He appreciated the shout out?
Yeah. Well, I don't think he had listened to the episode yet, but he appreciated that I just responded. I think he was under the impression that we get lots of emails.
Yeah, that might not be accurate.
Yeah, we get not very many emails.
Which
I don't think it was helped by I got locked out of the account for a while, and we got do you remember this when we got 10 emails?
Yeah.
I don't respond to one of them because I was locked out, and then it was 6 months later. Anyway, but I think for the pastor out there, it's helping people connect their day-to-day jobs to God's work in the world, and how through their jobs or vocations or these different things that they are actually helping serve other people. So that's one area. Mm-hmm. And I would say for the person that is working in whatever you're doing is trying to reflect and think through ways that their day-to-day responsibility is helping serve others, grow God's kingdom, engage in gospel work of some kind. Mm-hmm. How that's helping those things. So
okay,
those are just some quick things.
Gotcha.
I do have some good Luther quotes here, if you would like to hear them.
He is eminently quotable.
So on the topic of the mask of God and God meeting your daily needs, Luther would say things like, God is milking the cows through the vocation of the milkmaid.
Okay.
Which I love. I think that's a good one. My goodness, let me see what else. When you pray for daily bread, you are praying for everything that contributes to you having and enjoying your daily bread. You must open and expand your thinking so that it reaches not only as far as the flour bin in the baking oven, but also over the broad fields and farmlands and the entire country that produces, processes, and conveys to us our daily bread. Maybe one more. I have one really fun one. Okay, so this one's a little bit longer, so prepare yourself.
I'm buckled up and ready to go.
Okay. Speaking on family life. Alas, a great way to start a quote. Alas, must I rock the baby, wash its diapers, make its bed, smell its stench, stay up all night with it, take care of it when it cries, heal its rashes and sores, and to top that off, care for my wife, provide for her, labor at my trade, take care of this and that, do this and that, endure this and endure that, and whatever else of bitterness and drudgery married life involves. What should I make of a prisoner of myself? When then the Christian faith, what does the Christian faith say to this? It opens the eyes, look upon all these insignificant, distasteful, and despised duties in the Spirit, and is aware that they are all adorned with divine approval, as with the costliest gold and jewels. I confess to thee that I am not worthy to rock this babe or wash its diapers, or to be entrusted with the care of the child and its mother. How that I, without any merit, have come to the distinction of being certain that I am serving thy creature in thy most precious will. Oh, how gladly will I do so, though the duties should be even more significant and despised. So,
yeah, that's helpful in terms of contextualizing ordinary everyday activities that can seem like drudgery or how does this serve God by changing diapers and preparing meals and
we might even say scrubbing toilets today,
tilling the ground and those kinds of things. So from your experience, what are some things that we in the church or even here in the sort of university setting do that can undermine, unintentionally of course, that can undermine people's understanding of vocation. So what are some things that we do in the church or even here in the university unintentionally? Like I don't think there's anybody out there saying I'm setting out to undermine vocation. But what are some unintentional things that we might do or say that hinder people from understanding vocation or recognizing its importance?
Yeah. Couple things come to mind. That sacred secular divide, I think we naturally fall into that thinking.
Yeah.
Particularly as evangelicals, that the pastoral work is really the good work, or missionary work might even be above that. And everybody else is here to support that. And they're not really doing good work. It's just these spiritual giants. I think that's one way, and I think we got to be careful not to fall into that sort of thinking.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would say is we need to have a more developed theology of work that goes along with this, where we don't just say, go to your job, your Christian responsibilities are to share your faith, be ethical, and make a lot of money so that we can do missions. That trying to get people to understand that there is redemptive processes even in their own work. Even though those things are good, right? We certainly don't want to encourage unethical behavior or a lack of charity or giving or anything like that. So
right, yeah.
So those are a couple things that come to mind. Anything you would add to that?
I think in the university context, I think that one of the things that can undermine vocation is when there is such an emphasis on what job can I get on the other end of this.
Sure.
And tailoring everything to a very pragmatic, well, if I'm not going to use this tangibly in whatever career that I want to engage in, then why do I need to learn it? I'm going to be a scientist, so why do I need to take a literature class? That kind of thing. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of the liberal arts education done well, is that it helps form you as a person so that you engage in those activities in a way that reflects God's character and understands that it's about more than just, can I get a job? Can I just get a job on the other end of this? And can I get a job that will make me the money that I want?
Yeah.
And I think when oftentimes parents, even more so than students, come in with that sort of, okay, what kind of job is my kid going to be able to get on the other side of 3 years or 4 years here? And will they be able to use that to pay off their student debt or whatever? And I'm not downplaying that as a legitimate question. I think there's a place to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if my kid majors in this, what kind of jobs are they likely to be able to get on the other side? But, the university, in particular the Christian liberal arts institution, should be about way more than just, here's a set of job skills. We've given them to you. Or we've looked at, and I want to be careful how I say this, but, we have a career services department here at Grace. And that part of their role is to help students find jobs and even be aware of like what sort of job skills our employers looking for. And that has entered into our conversations in terms of what we're doing in classes and how are we preparing students for today's workforce.
Sure.
That's legitimate. That's good. Please don't misunderstand me. But sometimes people can fall into the trap of thinking, and that's it. Well, if we've done that, then we've kind of done our job as an institution. Yeah. And that's not vocation.
Well, it lacks service to others, and
right.
lots of times, and I know our career people pretty well. They
do a good job. Yeah.
They do a good job, but sometimes that career conversation can turn very selfish very quickly, right?
Sure.
It can turn into just like a how do I get mine sort of conversation,
right?
Instead of a how do I serve others.
Yes.
conversation, which is much more a vocational question.
Right. Yeah. Again, this is a subject that we could go on for much longer. Anything that you want to make sure we add that you were hoping we'd get to that maybe we didn't before we move on to our next topic? I don't want to cut you off, but we are.
Oh my goodness. I'll say this, and sometimes we can have conversations even about vocation where it's choice driven. That this is a decision you make. In our definition, I added in the word responsibilities. There are some things that come upon us that we just have to, that become part of our vocation that we never ask for. So, I think that's worth reflecting on as well.
And I might add in there, too often people think about vocation in ways that is very individualistic in terms of I have to determine what my calling is.
Sure.
And of course there's an element of that, but the people around you who know you well should have input on that. They should be the ones who are affirming or saying, I just don't see that. Instead, I think you're more suited the way that God has wired you and gifted you for maybe something like this. So that vocation is not just merely and we deal with this, I think, to some degree with people thinking about going into ministry. Well, I have a calling. Okay. All right. Well, anybody else want to echo that? You have any people in your life who have seen your gifting, have seen your interests, have seen fruit in your life in these areas that will come along and say, absolutely. I think, there's something to that, as opposed to just I had this warm, fuzzy feeling of thinking about being in ministry, and that's what I'm going to do.
At youth camp or something like that.
Yeah. Or, well, my youth pastor seems really cool, and that'd be fun to have that job. So that's my calling to ministry. Well, maybe not.
Time to retool and rethink. Yeah, absolutely. All right, ready to move on to this day?
Well, do you have any resources that you can post?
Yeah, there's
some articles or even some recommended reading on this topic of vocation.
Yeah, there's a book by Gene Veith that I'll put in the show notes.
Okay.
David Brooks also has a quarter of a book that's dedicated to this topic. I'll post both those in the show notes as well. All
right. So it's time to move on to this day in sports history.
All right, 1935, the first Major League Baseball game to be played at night.
Yes.
To be played at night in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Reds-Phillies.
Yeah. Reds-Phillies, and the Reds won.
Yeah, second consecutive week with the Reds reference.
Really? I don't know.
Last week was they threw a new no-hitter and lost.
Oh, yes. That's right. 1967, the AFL grants a franchise to the Bengals. Cincinnati
heavy today.
We're a little Cincinnati heavy.
Yeah. I mean, we do have listeners in the Cincinnati area.
Yeah. 1970, Skyline Chili is in – just kidding. That's not part of this. 1980, Stanley Cup Finals, Nassau Coliseum, Uniondale, New York. The New York Islanders beat the Flyers 5-4 in overtime for a game 4-2.
For 4 games to 2.
Yeah, 4 games to 2 series win.
Okay, help me. Now, your hockey allegiances in terms of New York are with the Rangers, yes? Or with the
So when I lived there, I was a big Rangers fan.
Okay.
And the reason is because Madison Square Garden had a cable network, and so did the Islanders. Our cable package only came with the Madison Square Garden, so I could watch Ranger games when I lived there. But I would – not that I know anybody on the team, but I definitely rooted for the Penguins living in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Is the division over the hockey teams in New York as heated as, say, baseball?
No. I mean, I think there's a small rivalry there, but it's not the
Yankees Mets kind of thing, or even the Knicks Nets ish.
It might be worse than Knicks Nets, but
okay.
But just because the Nets have been good, I don't think the Islanders have been good.
Okay, at least since 1980.
Yeah, they haven't been very, very good.
Okay.
1992, the Indianapolis 500, Al Unser Jr., classic, holds off Scott Goodyear to win by.
Let me just note, if your last name is Goodyear, I mean, being
you got to be a racer.
You would think.
Do you think that's the same family?
Scott Good. Well, maybe, but
Goodyear tires?
You have to get endorsement deals from. I mean, your last name is Goodyear.
Maybe he changed his last name to get endorsement deals.
Maybe.
That'd be a next level move. That'd be a very 2022 move.
It would be a very 2022 move.
The closest finish in the Indianapolis 500 history.
Yes. So,
man, slim pickings.
Yes, I mean the Indy 500 is coming up this upcoming weekend. This is we hit a window here where it was heavy on the Indy 500 results in the May 24th. So, do you have an inclination, a leaning here?
I'm probably the first Major League Baseball game at night. Seeing that last year the podcast went to a Cincinnati night game.
True. That's true. Excellent point.
That'd be my leaning.
Okay. Yeah, I can go with that.
Okay.
I can go with that. One thing you liked?
Like I said earlier, my one thing I liked, the C.S. Lewis biography by Alistair McGrath. I think I may have mentioned it before, but the fact that he was corresponding with an Italian priest and they were both writing to one another in Latin blew my mind a little bit. Just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And to hear him break down, I mean, he's doing a deep dive into just like, here's how Narnia reflects medieval literature. Here's how Narnia reflects this.
Yeah.
Here's how Lewis is going after eugenics in talking about in Narnia. You know, talking about all those things. So
right.
So I was just like, wow, I didn't. You know, it's there's a lot of layers to Narnia
for sure. For sure. For me, we were in Omaha this past weekend for my nephew's high school graduation.
Nice.
So it was good to see Kate's family. And so Jake went with us. His lovely girlfriend Autumn went with us as well. That was a lot of fun. A lot of time in the car.
Yeah.
It's basically 10 hours out and 10 hours back. So went out Friday, came back Monday. So
nice.
2 days there and 2 days on the road.
Nice.
But good to see them, good weather, and just a lot of fun on that road trip. So we're going to go with the Omaha trip for the one thing I liked.
Nice. Any good podcasts in the car that you guys are listening to?
So I didn't do any podcasts. I was listening to an audio book. Let me pull up the title here. The audio book, and this is on Scribd, which is where I listen to my audiobooks. It is entitled True Believer, Stalin's Last American Spy. So it's this guy that worked in the State Department in the 30s and 40s and was spying for the Soviet Union. And interesting how that kind of came about and how Stalin eventually turned on him and had him captured and tortured. And so just crazy to think about the era that they lived in and the understandable concern. You know, obviously it eventually got overdone, but there were legitimate communist spies that had infiltrated a lot of the government.
Yeah.
And so just interesting to see all that play out. So it's good, not great. It's enough to keep my interest, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, you have to listen to this.
Okay.
So
it's no 1865.
No. And not the book Russians Among Us that were the sleeper cells. That that was just blew me away. All right, we have talked limited amounts of sports. We've talked about things we're reading, and a reminder about our summer read. Randy Newman, Mere Evangelism, 10 Insights from C.S. Lewis to help you share your faith. We talked Martin Luther on Vocation. We talked some night baseball. We talked about C.S. Lewis, a biography that John is reading. And we talked about a trip to Omaha. So I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics.
I think so.
Are you ready to call mission accomplished?
I am.
Okay, so all that's left to say is until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.